What if I told you that one of the most powerful turning points in modern history wasn't decided on? A battlefield wasn't voted on in a parliament and wasn't announced with fireworks and applause? What if it happened quietly, inside a private meeting room, signed with a pen, orchestrated by a single banker? We're taught that history is shaped by kings, generals, and presidents. We remember names like emperors and revolutionaries. But what if the real shift, the one that rewired the global financial system, came from a man who never commanded an army? Tonight, we're going to follow the story of one banker whose decisions didn't just move markets. They changed the course of the 20th century and reshaped the world you live in right now. And the twist? Most people have never heard his name. Welcome to Its Financial History 2. To understand how one banker changed world history, we have to go back to a time when money meant something very different. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the global economy operated on the gold standard. Currencies weren't just paper promises, they were tied directly to physical gold. Governments couldn't simply create money at will. If they wanted to print more, they needed more gold in there. Vaults. This system created stability, but also fragility. After World War I, Europe was shattered. Nations were drowning in debt. Reparations demanded from Germany strained its economy to the breaking point. Inflation surged. Political tension simmered beneath the surface. At the same time, the United States was rising as the world's financial center. And in 1913, a powerful new institution had been created, the Federal Reserve. At its center stood a man who would become one of the most influential financial figures in history, Benjamin Strong. You may not recognize the name. He wasn't a president. He wasn't a general. But as the first governor of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, he effectively became the most powerful central banker in the world. Strong believed in something radical for his time, that central banks should actively manage the economy. Before him, financial systems were mostly reactive. Crashes were allowed to burn themselves out, even if the pain was severe. Strong believed intervention could prevent collapse. He formed close relationships with European central bankers, especially in Britain. His goal was ambitious: restore stability to the global financial system after the chaos. But here's where the chain reaction begins. Britain wanted to return to the gold standard at its pre-war value. Politically, it was a matter of prestige. Economically, it was risky. The British pound was overvalued, and returning at that rate would strain their economy. To support Britain, Strong kept U.S. interest rates lower than they might otherwise have been during the mid-1920s. Low interest rates mean cheap credit. Cheap credit encourages borrowing. Borrowing fuels speculation. Speculation inflates asset prices. At first, it looked like genius. The American economy boomed. The stock market soared. Confidence surged. The 1920s became known as the Roaring Twenties. Ordinary Americans began investing in stocks. Margin trading, borrowing money to buy shares, became common. Wealth seemed effortless. Newspapers celebrated a new era of permanent prosperity. But underneath the excitement, leverage was building. The prosperity wasn't entirely organic. It was supported by monetary policy designed not only for domestic growth, but for international balance. Then, in 1928, Benjamin Strong died unexpectedly. Suddenly, the central figure coordinating international monetary policy was gone. Without his leadership, the Federal Reserve shifted direction. Concerned about rampant speculation, it began raising interest rates aggressively in 1928 and 1929. But the tightening came late, and it came fast. Debt levels were already high. Markets were stretched. Confidence was fragile beneath the surface. In October 1929, the stock market crashed. Panic spread. Banks began to fail. Credit evaporated. Businesses collapsed. What followed wasn't just a recession, it was the Great Depression. Unemployment soared to unprecedented
lower
levels.
borrowing costs.
Global trade
This makes it easier
contracted
to get
sharply.
loan approvals.
Entire economies spiraled.
Low interest
downward.
rates mean lower
The combination
borrowing
of
costs.
easy money
This
in the
makes it easier to get loan
mid-1920s,
approvals.
followed by abrupt tightening at the end of the decade, amplified the collapse. After Strong's death, the Federal Reserve failed to act decisively
Low interest
to
rates mean
support
lower
the
borrowing costs.
banking system.
This
The
makes
money
it easier to
supply
get loan
contracted
approvals.
dramatically, deepening the crisis.
Low interest rates mean
Cause,
lower borrowing
effect,
costs.
spiral.
This makes it
The Great
easier to get
Depression
loan
didn't
approvals.
stay confined to financial charts. Economic despair reshaped politics. In Germany, instability and hardship fueled extremist movements. Across Europe and beyond, radical ideologies gained traction. Within a decade, the world was at war again. Now pause and consider that chain reaction. Interest rate
Low interest
decisions
rates mean lower
led
borrowing
to asset
costs.
bubbles.
This makes
Asset
it easier
bubbles
to get loan
led to
approvals.
crashes. Crashes led to depression. Depression fueled political extremism. Extremism led to global conflict. No single decision caused World War II, but monetary policy decisions played a powerful role in shaping the environment that made upheaval possible. After the devastation of the Depression and the war, world leaders sought to prevent such chaos from happening. Again, in 1944, representatives from dozens of nations met in Bretton Woods and constructed a new financial system. The US dollar was tied to gold, and other currencies were tied to the dollar. Institutions were created to stabilize exchange rates and provide emergency funding. The lessons seemed clear. Global financial systems required coordination and oversight. Yet history continued to evolve. In 1971, U.S. President Richard Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility into gold. The gold standard effectively collapsed. For the first time, the global monetary system ran entirely on fiat currency, money backed not by metal, but by trust. From that moment forward, central bankers gained even more power. Without gold as a constraint, monetary policy became more flexible and more experimental. Fast forward to 2008. A housing bubble burst. Financial institutions teetered on the edge. The global economy faced another potential depression. Central banks responded aggressively, slashing interest rates to near zero
The gold standard
and
era,
launching
vaults
massive
brimmed with
asset
wealth
purchase
as workers
programs.
counted the
The
empire's
strategy
reserves,
worked
a
in the
symbol
short
of
term.
stability and
Markets
prosperity.
stabilized. Collapse was avoided, but the pattern looked familiar. Low rates fueled asset inflation.
The gold
Stocks
standard
and
era,
real
vaults
estate
brimmed with
surged.
wealth as
Debt
workers
levels
counted
climbed
the
to
empire's
record
reserves,
highs.
a symbol
Wealth
of
inequality
stability and
widened.
prosperity.
Financial markets grew increasingly dependent on central bank support. Today, global debt exceeds levels unimaginable a century ago. Asset valuations remain historically elevated. Central banks once again face a dilemma: raise rates to control inflation and risk triggering recession, or keep rates low and risk inflating the next bubble. The cycle echoes the past.
The
Easy
gold
money
standard
fuels
era,
growth.
vaults brimmed
Growth
with wealth
becomes
as workers
excess.
counted the empire's
Excess becomes
reserves,
fragility.
a symbol of stability
Fragility
and prosperity.
meets tightening. Crisis follows. Benjamin Strong believes central banks could smooth out economic cycles and stabilize the world. In many ways, his philosophy became the foundation of modern monetary policy. But his story reveals something deeper. Monetary decisions are not neutral. They shape incentives, risk-taking, inequality, and political stability. Their consequences often appear years later, long after the original policymakers are gone. Stability itself can create instability. When crises are prevented, risk-taking grows. When risk grows unchecked, the system becomes fragile. And when fragility finally meets stress, the correction can be severe. Most importantly, individuals matter. History is often described as systems and structures, but systems are steered by people, by their beliefs, judgments, and timing. Benjamin Strong did not intend to trigger global catastrophe. He aimed to stabilize a fragile world. Yet his policies, combined with the reactions that followed his death, helped shape one of the most turbulent periods in human history. So here's the question that lingers. If one banker's decisions helped influence the Great Depression, altered global politics, and contributed to a restructuring of the world financial order, what decisions being made today will historians look back on as the turning point of our era? The most powerful forces in history are not always visible. They don't always wear uniforms or hold political office. Sometimes they sit behind closed doors, adjusting interest rates by fractions of a percent. And those small adjustments can change the world. If this story made you see financial history in a new way, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden forces shaping our global system. Like the video if you want more cause and effect breakdowns of history's biggest turning points. And in the comments, tell me, do you think central banks make the world more stable or more fragile? Because the next shift may already be in motion.